People are coming on in. We've got a whole slew. We got a couple dozen people in. Awesome. Welcome everybody as we're getting situated. It's awesome to see some familiar names of friends and clients and things like that. And it's awesome to see some new names. We will get started in just a minute or two. It's 2 o'clock. It just turned 2 o'clock Eastern. So good morning for West Coasters. Good evening for people in Europe or other parts of the world. We are going to kick off how to steal your competitors' online share and grow your digital presence in about 1 or 2 minutes. I'll go through the ground rules in a minute, but what I'd love to have people do as we kick off is to put in the chat your location. So just tell me where you're calling in from or zooming in from. We'd love to get a good spread of where people are joining us as we wait for everybody to join us. Awesome. We're seeing somebody all the way from Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, Indiana, my hometown. Awesome. Cincinnati area, Kentucky, California, Michigan. We got a good audience. Anybody calling from outside the US? I know we had a bunch of registrants from outside the US. So anybody from outside the US? I haven't seen one yet. Awesome. We got Kentucky, we got Michigan, we got Texas. Awesome. It's great to have a good spread, and we'll get started in just about 30 seconds. All right. Paul and Beth, you guys ready to, you guy and lady ready to rock? All right, so let us go ahead and get started. We have got quite a big group. As people may have seen, this is the largest webinar we've ever done here at And Marketing. So I think that's a testament to all the previous ones we've done and the topic being very relevant. So super excited to have everybody. I'm going to post into the chat the ground rules, and I'll just go over those really quickly. So for those that have been to an And Marketing webinar before, welcome back. Thank you so much. My name is Raj Kapoor. I'm the founder and CEO of And Marketing. One of the ground rules we have is this is a highly interactive webinar. So we use polls, we use the hand raise, throw in some questions, make snarky remarks. We will see them all. We appreciate them. It keeps us, it makes us know that you are listening and paying attention, which is absolutely awesome. We do not try to be the boring webinar. So number one, please participate. And with that said, if you guys have any questions right off the bat about the topic, or anything related to digital marketing strategy, go ahead and throw it in the channel. I will be monitoring it. Throughout the entire webinar, as you have questions, please do throw your questions in the webinar. I will interrupt the speakers at the right moment to ask them the right question. If we don't get to your question during the slides, we will have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. And if we don't get it to in the Q&A for some reason, we'll respond individually or send out something with a Q&A document or something like that. And then the last question we always get is, will there be a recording? And the answer is yes, there will absolutely be a recording. You'll have access to the slides and anything like that. All right, so those are the ground rules. I'll go through a very quick introduction of all the speakers and hand it over to Paul and Beth for theirs. So again, my name is Raj Kapoor. I started And Marketing about 5 years ago with a very simple premise that middle market companies need access to the strategy and execution resources that Fortune 500 companies have. I spent about 20 years working with Fortune 500 and working at Fortune 500 companies in a mix of sales, strategy, and obviously marketing roles. And my goal was to bring that there. And marketing is a result of that. Paul and Beth are part of the leadership team, and they've done a great job over the past few years building up all of our awesome processes, including the one that we're talking about here today. So I'll hand it over to Paul for a quick introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Ferguson. I am the head of business intelligence and analytics at And Marketing, which is just an interesting way of saying I really like data and I like combing through that data and then applying that to marketing strategies that actually generate results. Beth and I kind of complement each other pretty well. I'm not big on the fluffier side of marketing is what I call it. I recognize how important it is, but the branding, positioning, it's just not really my thing. I'm more data-based and ROI-based. So it's always fun to kind of collaborate with Beth on that. So really excited to talk with you all today. Beth?
Yeah, hi everybody. I am Beth McDonough, Director of Content at And Marketing. I've been here since 2018. And as Paul said, I'm sort of the more creative, balanced left brain, right brain of our department here. And I started as a copywriter, and now I run a department of writers, and we also work on organic social media and the PR elements of our business. And I have a primarily writing and storytelling and pop culture background as well as a corporate background. So it's been exciting for me to be able to fuse the two. And I'll tell you more about how those two things work together today.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you so much, Paul. And let us get rolling. All right. So a little bit of background about and marketing. I told you a little bit about it. This is the offering that we have that brings all of the parts of our business together. So growing online share for our clients takes a lot of marketing strategy. It takes business intelligence, and it takes storytelling and branding, and it takes execution. So this is why we're having the webinar here with all of our leadership team, because we want to show all of that coming together. So I'm going to launch our first poll, and I might need a little bit of an assist to get to it. But we'd like to ask everybody, because I have so many windows open from all of the chat windows, we are going to launch a poll to ask. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Dexter, for doing that. We're launching a poll to ask how many people are in your company's marketing department. So we work with a whole variety of teams that might be, a large revenue company, but with almost no marketing people. And then we work with really big companies that have hundreds of marketers. I'd like to get a pulse of how big the marketing teams on this call are. So I'll talk a little bit more about and marketing. So again, we've been in business for about 5 years, and we help with marketing strategy, which is really the foundation of marketing. Who is your customer? What are their unmet needs? Where do I find them? Who is the competition? Paul talked a little bit about business intelligence and analytics, and that is really the data side of our business. Beth leads our storytelling and branding, as she described. That's all the content, copy, and those pieces. And then we're going to also talk a lot about planning and execution, which when the rubber hits the road is the most important thing, because if you have a great strategy and you don't execute it, it doesn't really amount to much. So it looks like we have a big bias towards smaller marketing departments, which is absolutely fine. So I am seeing about 90% of our participants are 10-person or fewer marketing departments, which is awesome. And that's about an even split between 0 and 1, and then 2 and 10. So that's absolutely awesome. So that gives us a really good flavor of who the audience is. And don't worry, if you work in a marketing department of, I'll go ahead and share the results. And if you work with a marketing department that is over 10 people or has 25 or 100 people, that's absolutely okay. We have clients in that group too. And a lot of all of these things certainly apply to you as well. So awesome. Let me start with kind of an overview of the entire presentation that talks about what we'll call the formula for online share growth. So you may want to screenshot this one, because it talks about the challenges that we face in almost all of the companies we deal with. These are real practical day-to-day challenges. So number one is internal silos. And if you heard the way that Paul introduced himself and the way that Beth introduced herself, it really does represent the internal silos that exist in a lot of teams. There's sort of a data and analytics side, and there's sort of a content and creative side, and the two shall not meet. But the truth is, when you break down those silos and have those two groups work together, that's when it works the best. The second one Paul is going to talk about is poor data management. You either don't have enough data, you're drowning in data, or you don't know how to build insights from your data. And Paul will talk a lot about that. The third one is an unclear target audience or a superficial target audience. I'll talk a little bit about that in the foundation of marketing. And then Beth and Paul will both talk a little bit about the importance of execution, but we see companies all the time with inconsistent execution, where one group's not talking to the other, or the blog doesn't get posted, or the SEO is incomplete, or the email doesn't get sent on time. So just inconsistent execution. And that, my friends, is independent of company size. Getting each step done is either encumbered by size because it's too big, too bureaucratic, too hard to get a yes, or you don't have the resources to do it, for those of you with very small marketing departments. So we've certainly seen both. And then the last one, and certainly not least, Beth will talk about ineffective content. So content that doesn't necessarily either tell the brand story or isn't effective for SEO or the other algorithms. So if you build all of those together, I'll talk a little bit about the foundation and how that's really important for marketing. Paul will go a deep dive into the analytics parts of that and how to overcome poor data management. Beth will talk about the importance of storytelling and branding. Beth and Paul will both talk about the importance of execution, because it requires collaboration across the silos. And then Paul will talk a little bit about how to optimize that on an ongoing basis with ongoing metrics. Okay, so that'll serve as an overview. And if you guys want to grab a screen share or something from that slide, that may be a good idea. Okay. And then let me jump into this strong marketing foundation. And here's what I like to say. We are in the digital age of marketing. Everything is digital, or almost everything is digital. even the most sophisticated B2B buyers and almost all B2C consumers go digital first, whether they're searching something on their phone, they're in the grocery cart looking at their online cart, or if they're exploring some very sophisticated $1 million plus B2B transaction. It's all happening online. But the foundations and the basics of a good marketing strategy are still the same. And really, I like to boil it down to 3 simple questions. Okay. Who is your target audience? What are their biggest pain points? And what is unique about your product or service? Okay. So I'm not going to go through every single example here, but we hear ineffective answers from big companies, from small companies, and from companies in between. Their who is either too generic or not, or they're trying to target everybody or something like that. You should be talking about building actual segments or actual personas of human beings that have real problems and real challenges. This could be demographic, but it's more often psychographic. So tell us the real problem and who that person is, not as a general monolith, but like a real human being. Okay. The second one is, what are their biggest pain points? So what is the thing that keeps them up at night? And what we often hear when we talk to companies is that they speak in platitudes or generic things like thirsty. Everybody's thirsty, right? Or they spend too much money. That's too much money, whether that's B2B or B2C. But get specific. What is the particular pain point that this particular decision maker has, and why is it a particular pain point? And then the last one is, we like to call ourselves uniqueness obsessed. So what is unique about your company versus your customer's next best alternative? Notice I didn't say competition. It could be do nothing. It could be you have a software that's going to be really good, but the competition is pen and paper or Microsoft Excel. What truly makes you unique? Okay. So that's the general foundational overview that we'd like to have. And all the veteran marketers that I know have signed up for this, you could write books about this. So I wanted to give a very quick overview of some of the basic mistakes that we see over and over. Awesome. I'm going to hand it over to Paul to talk about the importance of data-driven marketing strategy.
Thanks, Raj. I'm sure everyone on this call has heard the term data-driven marketing strategy before. It's kind of become one of those big buzzwords in the industry, like streamlined efficiencies or optimized marketing efforts. We kind of find that funny because we at And Marketing think that data-driven marketing strategy is just table stakes. Fortunately, the marketplace is starting to catch on, as you can kind of see here with these stats. Companies are becoming a lot more familiar with all of the marketing data at their disposal. It's 2022. Now more than ever, you can access boatloads of data that we couldn't access 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So you can see that the marketplace is really starting to get turned on to this. So 64% of all marketing executives strongly agree that data-driven marketing is crucial in today's landscape. 40% of brands plan to increase their data-driven marketing budgets, which is very important. However, 87% of those marketers say that data is their company's most underutilized asset. And that's something that we see pretty consistently when we're working with clients or friends or family. They just don't know all the data sources that they can pull from. So that kind of leads us to our next poll here. How many of these data sources do you use when reviewing or developing marketing strategy or tactics or frameworks? Please just pick all that apply. Give everyone a minute or two.
Awesome. And I just put in the chat, and I'm reminding everybody that the Q&A panel is live. And so, yes, Laura asked, will the slides be available after the webinar? 100% of the times, no matter how many times we tell it, somebody always asks, will the deck be available? And the answer is yes. So you will get an email with a recording and the slides for the presentation as we give people a moment to do that, to go ahead and fill out their information, fill out their answers to Paul's poll. So it is, how many of these sources are you actually using? And pick as many as may apply. And we're starting to get some really good answers. Awesome. We've got 40 plus answers already. That's great. Perfect. All right, we'll give it another couple seconds here. And I'm going to close the poll in a few seconds. Oops. Looks like we got a great bunch of answers. Thank you all for participating. And I'm going to share the results. So Paul, as you can see, maybe much to your chagrin, but actually you'll probably see some that are not that surprising. About 80% of people on the webinar use website analytics, which is awesome. 70%, just shy of 70% use keyword research or analytics tools. 70% are looking at competitor data, sales and CRM data by about 2/3, social media data by about 70%, email data by about 60%, and then 50% are looking at paid ads accounts. So how does that help you, Paul, given the makeup of the group in terms of how many sources they're using?
One, it says to me that this group is more advanced than most. They're looking at a lot more data than most people that we interact with. But two, it's not really that big of a surprise to see that most people are utilizing website analytics, which is super important. But I think the biggest surprise for me are the keyword research tools, as well as actual social media data, because social media data is kind of a pain in the rear end to get. So it's encouraging to see everyone utilizing as much of these data sources as possible, because as we go on to say here, and the next slide over here, our biggest issue or our biggest problem when we meet most companies and future clients is there's insufficient data. There's not enough sources. They're only utilizing one of those data sources, usually Google Analytics, but in most cases, they're doing the bare minimum with Google Analytics, not utilizing goal completions or event tagging or anything like that. The other kind of areas that we see are misaligned data. So the data isn't talking to one another. So I have my analytics over here, I have my social media data over here, I have email data over here, I have paid ads down here. None of that is talking to one another, which we'll get into what you're kind of seeing in this picture here of the two spreadsheets we'll talk about in a second. On the other end, we do encounter a couple of people that have too much data and they're kind of paralyzed by that. They don't know where to look to find insights that they can use to help craft their marketing strategy going forward. And then that leads most times to inaction. When they have that much data, they don't know where to go. They say, I have website analytics, I have email data, but I don't know which is working best. As I kind of alluded to, prior to business intelligence tools, which have really kind of come on in the last 3 to 4 years, pulling out that data has always been very manually intensive. It's very cumbersome. It's usually done in Excel. As you can see here, and this is an actual data set that we'll show visualize in a different way in a second. These are two data sets from a client of ours. One of them has over almost 500,000 rows of data. The other one has 50,000 rows of data. And we're supposed to match that up, combine that and manipulate the data, create new columns so everything talks to one another, combine that into an Excel spreadsheet, create pivot tables and VLOOKUP formulas, and then try to comb through all of that 550,000 rows of data to find one or two insights. As I'm sure most people on this call know, whenever you do that with that big of data, Excel will crash before you've saved everything, leading you to maybe throw your laptop, which I may or may have done once or twice. It's not a very sustainable way of looking at data, and it's a very, very difficult way of understanding how well your marketing channels are working, how well all of your data is being collected, what should you do with that? So here at And Marketing, we've kind of developed a new way of analyzing and looking at data. And as I mentioned before, those two Excel spreadsheets are now reflected in the little dashboard that you can see on the left. Again, actual client data. That was e-commerce data combined with geographical data, combined with acquisition source data, combined with some email and social data as well. So all of that was kind of integrated together. It all talks to one another. And now I can easily comb through that dashboard to say, oh, well, a lot of our sales are in Pennsylvania. We should look at that. However, our largest average order value is in Texas. We should look at that. And I'm obviously generalizing here, but much easier to comb through than all of that 550,000 lines of data.
Yeah. Hey, Paul.
So the best practice now, yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna give you a quick breath. So I'm gonna make a cynical comment first, because I saw the poll and I think people are lying. Because as we go through this more and more, we realize that people think that they're using this data when they're not actually using the data. Or they glance at their Facebook statistics in maybe a 5-second passing thing, or their LinkedIn or whatever the type of business you have, whether it be B2B or B2C, and you think that checks the box. And so if I was looking at this, I would say, yeah, I look at my social media data, but I'm looking at it in isolation. I'm not drawing trends over time, and I'm not doing those types of things at all. So part of me wonders if those numbers feel very high to me, or maybe we have some sample bias and only the smart people who actually look at these data and these trends would show up to a webinar like this. But that's why I was really surprised that these numbers were a little bit higher. And my friend
Ross lied. He's messing up.
He admits that he lied. So yeah, Ross, I think you're a liar. I'm just going to say that. I didn't want to call you out individually. I'm just kidding. So we also have a comment from somebody else that says, a lot of data doesn't necessarily mean accurate or actionable. And then a follow-up question that talks about how do you actually navigate analysis paralysis? So I'd love to hear your response to how to navigate analysis paralysis, Paul.
So 2 ways. One is making sure that all of your data, and I'm going to repeat this a lot, is talking to one another, right? Oftentimes, as we've talked about with silos within marketing departments, you can have silos in data. And if you have to continually look back and forth for different things, it's very difficult to generate analysis, right? And I see there's the question, how do you align all of these data sources? Well, we have several tools that help us with that. But the big thing is you do need to spend some time aligning certain categories or creating relationships with I call it like-minded categories or columns within Excel spreadsheets. We use a tool, Orbit's metrics, I believe it's called, that helps us align easily sample data or multiple data sources so that it does talk to one another. The other way to kind of avoid analysis by paralysis is making sure that your data is presented in a way that is easily that you can easily analyze. So that's why we create dashboards like the left over here to make sure that that's a ton of data there, but we can easily look at trends based off of the dashboards that we're creating.
Yeah, you got that question. You nailed it, Paul. I think you saw it. So it's a combination of tools. So whoever asked, how do you align these data sources and have them speak to each other? It's actually 2 different challenges. So the first challenge is getting all of the data aggregated, whereas a tool like Google Sheets or Excel just can't do because it crashes. So our preferred tool, is Power BI. There's also Tableau. That's a really good tool, but these specific aggregation tools are for that. The second part cannot be undermined that Paul is making, and it's about having them talk to each other. So anybody that has done significant analysis in Excel, and I would imagine a lot of people have, it takes just as long to align the rows and columns so that they're talking to each other because the font and the syntax might be slightly off. One might use the entire state name, one might use the abbreviation or something like that. And just getting all of those to speak to each other through things like VLOOKUPs is a full-time job, right? And so cutting that down with the tool, Paul, can you give the name of that tool? It's Orbit, did you say? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, Orbit's metrics. But you also mentioned within BI, Power BI allows us to create relationships between multiple data sources via columns that will match. So that's another. Also, Tableau. Tableau is exactly like Power BI, except Power BI is free. Tableau is, a cost base. But those are kind of the tools that we use. Another good tool for aligning data is Imprivado and Alight Analytics. Those are other vendors that could help you align your data that we've looked at and used in the past.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Anything else, or can we move past this page?
Last but not least, so as you kind of mentioned, Raj, with these practices, we're able to save about 90% of time gathering, aligning, comparing, and conducting data analysis manually, which is a big issue, as Raj mentioned. That's the main time suck that we have, is when you're trying to manipulate data to talk to one another. So
awesome. And we got another question coming in, Paul. So it's, hi, Paul, what are some of the most important and overlooked insights to analyze that will help us understand where we can improve and grow our business? It's a pretty general question. How would you start answering that?
Yeah, that's kind of a little bit loaded because it depends on what you're trying to analyze, right? So what we do at AM Marketing, and we'll talk about it a little bit when Beth goes through her slides in terms of measurement and optimization, is we have KPIs for every type of activity that we're doing. So we have different KPIs for our content marketing efforts than we would for our e-commerce efforts. So it kind of depends on what you're looking to measure or what you're trying to see to determine what insights you want to gather.
Yes, absolutely. The best tool we have, the best set of questions that we use before we start a project like this, to the person who asked it, I think other people are probably, Morgan asked it, what I would say is you have to be really clear on what is the business question that you're trying to answer. And important note is not the marketing question, it's the business question. What is the business trying to do? Because then we go back, pull the data, pull the analysis, put it all together. We want it to be able to have a business outcome, not just a marketing outcome, because at the end of the day, we love being marketing people, but we're also business people, and we want to see business outcome.
Yeah, to that point, that's the big issue here with BI. A lot of companies do business intelligence, but they only focus on the digital marketing aspect. We're not interested in that. We want to see the holistic business picture, and we want to obviously create marketing strategies that are going to help us drive our business goals, and that's what we use BI for. So,
perfect. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for representing the left side of the brain. All right, right side of the brain. Beth, take over.
Okay. So you can have a solid foundation in place and you can know exactly who you're selling your product or service to, why they need it so much, and why your business is like no other on the market. But none of that means anything if you can't reach those people and create a meaningful connection with them. So the key to that connection is creating strong and consistent messaging that's going to resonate and build trust with your audience. So you might think you have a strong identity already and super unique messaging for your business, but just like Raj and Paul did with the foundation and the data elements, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the mistakes that we see most often with messaging. So the first is excessive self-promotion. 45% of people will unfollow a brand whose content is too self-promotional. We know that you have built something that you're incredibly proud of and you want everyone to know about it. But the truth is your customer does not care how amazing and fantastic you are or your product and services. They care how amazing and fantastic you can make them feel. We're hardwired to care most about our own needs first, and we want to buy and spend our money with businesses who focus on us rather than themselves. So we're about to talk about storytelling. And as you know, in every story, there's a primary hero. And so in the story you're telling, your company is not the hero, your customer is. So right now, today, I want you to start thinking about how you can stop competing with your customer as the hero. So start talking about yourself less and about them more. The second mistake I see is when brands receive first and give later. Here's the thing. Customers are not going to trust you until they have a reason to. Raj talked earlier about how it's 2022. There's noise everywhere, especially online. There's competition everywhere. But the ones who focus on building trust and relationship first by offering value before there's ever a transaction are the ones that are going to win every time. The average time on a website now is 10 to 15 seconds. So if someone in your target audience gets to your website, gets to your piece of content, reads your email, gets to your landing page, and doesn't see something immediately that resonates with them, they will leave and you will lose them completely. So now we'll spend a minute on the bells and whistles. This is one that might break your heart a little bit, but it has to be said. You might have the absolute most cutting edge technology on the face of the planet in the entire market, the fastest, strongest cybersecurity system, or an artificial intelligence software that no one has ever seen before. Or maybe you have the healthiest, most delicious cheese or cookies on the planet. But the truth is your customer doesn't actually care about any of that. They don't care about the bells and whistles you have to offer. They care if it helps them solve their problem. Those pain points that Raj talked about earlier in the foundation section of webinar. You're not selling the laundry detergent with the newest cleaning technology. You're getting grass stains out of your kids' clothes, You're getting wine stains out of mom's white blouse. You're not flexing your incredible artificial intelligence. You are helping e-commerce managers protect their sales. You aren't just making the most delicious cheese ever. You are helping the woman who is invited to a potluck feel confident that she's buying the right thing in the specialty cheese section because she's struggling and has no idea what to choose. And so when businesses get caught up trying to sell something, they get into the weeds and forget about how the real people on the other side are the ones who are buying. They forget that real connection is what actually converts. And that connection is as much about how you say something as it is about what you say. So your brand personality means a lot here because that's how you make that connection and start to build that trust. And lastly, as I'm sure you can see a theme here, most companies define success through their own bottom line, which is sales. Obviously, yes, that matters a whole lot. But your customers care much less about how much money your company has made or what it's worth or that it's Fortune 500 or Fortune 100. They care about how you make them and people who are like them feel. They care about how you have transformed another person's real life who is similar to them. They want to be able to picture themselves achieving their goals rather than your goals. So how do you do all this? After all, the attention span, the average attention span, and this stat is from 2019, had dropped from 20 seconds to 8 seconds. And I said 2019 because it's important to say that that number is from before the pandemic. So I would wager to say that now it's even lower than 8 seconds. That is the attention span of a goldfish. But thankfully, we are a little bit more complex than goldfish. And so you can capture attention using one thing, and that is the power of a compelling story. All right. So we have a couple of fancy looking graphics on here. You might have seen these before. You might not have seen them before. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes on each. Stories spark a real, actual chemical response in our brains, like an actual switchboard. They grab our attention and they propel us outside of our own fantasies into a world that give our thoughts and emotions direction and, again, connection. So if you create a compelling brand narrative for your hero where you build their trust and you make them feel something, you can build a relationship where they keep coming back to you and you are the source for information and you are the source that they go to for help. There are lots of ways to tell stories. Here at AM Marketing, we have chosen to adopt Donald Miller's story brand framework. That is an adaptation of the hero's journey, which is a story template originally created way back when and coined by Joseph Campbell. So you'll see some hero's journey templates if you look online. They look all a little bit different. Some have more steps. I think the ones I've seen have up to 12, and then some of them have as few as 3 or 4 steps. But the basis is this. A hero is faced with a problem, is called to an adventure to help solve that problem, faces it, overcomes it, and then comes home victorious and transformed. So if you're a literature, pop culture nerd like me, epic literary stories like the Odyssey, Dante's Inferno immediately come to mind. They follow this framework to a T. Once you recognize it and identify it, it will ruin movies forever for you. I accidentally spoiled 1917 for Raj a couple of years ago when it came out because I told him it followed the story brand framework, the hero's journey, to a T.
Sorry about that. It was a good movie until you ruined it.
It was a very good movie. I was about 5 minutes in. I said, "Oh, this person's going to die. This is what's going to happen. Here's how it's going to end." Star Wars is obviously one of those prominent film series that follows the hero's journey almost exactly. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones. You get the idea. All Disney movies do, from The Lion King to Moana. The Matrix does this. But you might be wondering what pop culture has to do with your business's marketing and messaging. And it's simple. A clear and compelling story gets your message across by connecting with your customer, building their trust, empowering them, and guiding them toward their own transformation. And if you think about these stories, right, some of those books and films, who helps that hero find their happily ever after? And the answer is almost always a wise and experienced guide, which is you. That's your brand, that's your business. So in order to step into the role of the guide, you have to communicate with them in a way that's going to earn their trust. So as you're perfecting your messaging, think about what personality your hero would respect and follow for guidance, and embody that personality in your brand voice. So you can see this wheel that we have on the left here. This is a brand archetype exercise that we do with businesses that we work with. There are 4 quadrants. This is all based on your ideal customer's deepest desire. So our wheel is color coded, and you can see we have stability, freedom, change, and belonging. Just about everybody's deepest desire fits in one of those 4 quadrants. So if you know that and you already know this, right? Because you have all the data, you've got all the foundationals, you know who you're talking to and you know what they want. If their desire is stability, you're going to infuse those personality types into your content, into your videos, into your emails, into all of your messaging. And this is super important because you don't want to crack a joke or curse or sound too egotistical or sound too sympathetic if that is not what your ideal audience and your ideal customer wants to hear. A lot of brands go a little bit rogue because they want to sound different than their competitors, right? They want to be edgier, or they want to be more soft-spoken. They want to stand out from their competitors, but there's a reason why certain personas work better than others, because it is the type of voice your customer trusts. I keep going back to your hero, right? Would they respond with admiration if you cracked a joke or use sarcasm, or would they balk, right? Would they trust you more, or would they trust you less? So now that you understand the what and the why behind storytelling and marketing, we're going to talk a little bit about the how. And I will.
Yeah. Beth, I'll let you take a breath before we transition slides, but you get a question. And the question is, I've heard of the hero's journey, but this is my first time seeing the brand archetype wheel. Can your brand identify with more than one brand archetype? That's a question we get pretty often, so I thought you should answer it.
Yes. So we have like a workshop and a quiz that we do with companies to help them identify their brand archetypes. But the simplest answer is you should have a primary and a secondary. And the clean split that you can kind of think about in your head is 80-20. So you want 80% to be your primary archetype and 20% to be your secondary. And that can change a little bit depending on how much a relationship you've built with your customer. But say you are primary is the caregiver and your secondary is the joker. That means that you're going to be a caretaker persona for them, but you're also going to crack jokes a little bit. They react to humor well. So Yoda comes to mind, right? If you're a Star Wars fan, there's authority there and there's empathy, but there's also humor. So you can combine two to kind of create your unique brand personality.
Absolutely. And we have some talk in the chat. So there might be different archetypes for different ICPs, which is an ideal client profile or a target persona. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, keep going, Beth.
Okay. So you have your business goals, your marketing strategy, your data, and your story. You have the characters in mind. You have the personas. What now? It's time to put all of that foundational work into action with content creation that's going to push you above your competition. And here, the field that you're playing on is Google. 71% of all traffic on the web comes from Google searches. So as you can see here, almost everyone, and we all know this, who grabs their phone for help or for information goes to a search engine first now. And a lead that's brought into your business through SEO or search engine optimization, those are organic leads, meaning you don't have to pay for advertising. Those are 8.5 times more likely to convert. And that's because people are finding you while seeking help and information rather than being force-fed content from you. And collectively, we've learned to trust Google to give us the most valuable information first. And so Google's bots and algorithms are crawling, think of like little digital spiders, and they're designed to uncover the most valuable information and present it first. So your bigger competitors might have an automatic advantage because they're already super well known enough that Google gives them preferential treatment sometimes. But you can skip the line by creating content. And this includes not just written content, videos, visuals, graphics, infographics, things like that as well, that appeals to both your audiences and Google's algorithms. And the key to that is to combine both story and data. Because to succeed in content marketing, the creative and the analytical minds, left brain, right brain, and work streams in your business can't do this alone. They can't work in silos. Data helps build trust and authority while storytelling triggers the emotion. And together they produce the best results. So when you merge them, you can connect those dots from awareness to conversion more easily and quickly. We've got a poll. I want to know how often your data people and your content creative people actually talk to one another.
And can we have a ground rule about no lying? Because I'm pretty sure people lied last time. Let's just say that. So here's the question. How often do your data analytics teams and storytelling and copy teams, so your left brain teams and your right brain teams, how often do they collaborate? So let's go ahead and give an answer there. We're getting the answers streaming in. This is great. Paul, I'm going to ask you a question while this is going on, I was going to wait until the end, but I want to go ahead and ask it now. What is the biggest time suck when going through your analytics process? What is the biggest time suck? I know I have my opinion, but I'd love to hear from the depths of doing the work.
One is making sure it's set up correctly and aligned to your website properly to make sure that the key information is being tracked, such as goal completions or event tracking. That's a pretty big time suck that will in most cases involve a web developer or someone that's intricate or has intimate knowledge of your website. The other two is when you're trying to align multiple data sources and making sure that Google Ads and Search Console and social and email and all of that stuff is talking to your web analytics. So we alluded to that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, definitely. It ends up being about time and resources, I think. So perfect. I'm going to go ahead and thank you everybody for filling out. It looks like we got a good participation on the poll. I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So maybe non-surprising, we have less liars this time. So about 30% of people said that they never talk between each other, which did not surprise us at all. 9% said quarterly, 22%, about a quarter said monthly, and then about 40% said weekly or more often than that. So Beth, I'd love your reaction to that poll result. Does that surprise you?
No, it's pretty mixed, but the highest percentage is never. And I mean, Raj and Paul, you probably both remember, for a while, Paul and I rarely conversed and said like we were butting heads if we did talk, right? Because he had one opinion, I had another. We were working in such separate silos that we didn't coordinate as well as we should have. And we learned a lot of hard lessons that way. And now, I mean, what would you say, Paul? We probably talk every single day.
Yeah, that's right. Paul, you're on mute. Maybe it was better to have been
you with me every day. So yeah.
There you go. No, I think it's true. I mean, we're dealing with a real problem right now. Just again, straight to the chase about the practicality of this is that when we're working with clients and updating their website copy or doing things like that, they have a particular voice and a particular thing that they want to communicate. Yet our processes really do succeed on SEO. So I don't want to say the word battle, but we go back and forth quite a bit to find the exact balance between the words that the brand wants to use and what's actually going to work and has proven to work on SEO. So I think this is a little bit of a hidden gem in between there about what's on your website should be a mix of what the algorithm wants to see and your target audience wants to see. And I'm seeing a couple questions about sales. And part of this is, yeah, the sales team needs to be heard, absolutely, because that's part of the audience, right? The sales team should be influencing what the audience, who is the target customer, needs to hear there. So I love making jokes about sales, but as a career salesperson, I don't agree to that one. So there you go. Perfect. Yeah, I'm sorry, Beth, keep going. Talk about the importance of execution.
That's okay. Yeah, so few people can write well. Few people can write well with a specific strategy in mind. And even fewer people have the patience and the tenacity to dig deep for data to back up their assumptions. And so the combination of all this is incredibly, incredibly rare. You need data to inform the story and creative to tell it. And so you need data to help direct all the back end, the technical, the SEO that the bots look for, right? Like meta descriptions, H2 headers, schema. And then you need creative to infuse those things in a human way that doesn't feel forced or robotic. And I saw someone mention earlier, they wanted to know about the mistakes that we made. And one of them was, I was bound and determined that people cared about certain topics that the data said they didn't, right? So we wasted a lot of time writing about topics and choosing angles and putting a lot of emotion into stories that didn't resonate with people because we weren't speaking to them in the language that they were searching for information for on Google. And so to keep everybody on the same page, you want to make sure you have consistent and powerful and purposeful execution that everybody is involved in. And this is really the hardest part because you have to take all the research and strategy and planning and turn it into something consistent and real that you actually implement, right? We can all sit in a room and talk and strategize and plan things forever and ever. But this is where a lot of times we fall short. You can get stuck here. And so your marketing calendar should be your single source of truth. I feel like we should have done a poll here. I won't, but I would love to know how many people actually use and stick to a comprehensive marketing calendar.
Yeah, why don't we use the chat, Beth, as you're completing this out, why don't we use the chat? We don't have to set up a formal poll for it, but on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is we religiously all the time regularly use a content calendar, and 0, we don't even start a content calendar or we don't have anything. what would you rank your own company and your own processes in that? Okay. So you're getting the answers in there as you're talking.
This should be a living document. So everything in here, it should contain all of your activities. It should always be working towards your business goals. And you should always have metrics that are going to help you measure the success of every single piece of content marketing activity you have. And that is whether it's an email, whether it's a blog, whether it's a social post, everything you do. This is going to be your GPS because you use it to organize and guide every phase from planning to creating to publishing and promoting your content and making sure it's performing, because we don't want to keep doing what's not working. And we don't know what's working and what's not unless we're measuring it against specific goals. And so I am going to pass it to Paul for a minute to talk about how to do that.
So as we kind of alluded to earlier, specific goals are extremely important in regards to whatever it is that you're trying to measure, right? So Beth's goals for her content are vastly different than my goals for a ebook or for a digital advertising campaign or email. So it's very important to get alignment with the person that is responsible. So Beth and I will meet and say, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? And she has very detailed content calendars that lay out how much traffic she would like to see from this blog, how many goal completions she'd like to see from this blog, where she would want her focus keyword to be ranked in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. So it's very important, like I said, to gain or to collaborate and then gain a consensus with whoever it may be, your stakeholder, to determine what those KPIs are. One thing that we do a good job of, I feel, at AM Marketing is we kind of make sure everyone knows what those KPIs are. They're not siloed in each division. So if we're running a social media campaign and that happens to be going berserker and doing great, we'll share that with Beth to say, hey, this messaging is really resonating with this particular audience. Perhaps we can add this to the content calendar to build a blog on, or we should be utilizing this in SEO or maybe email. So it's very important to get to collaborate and make sure everyone that is involved, all the stakeholders, have a good, clear understanding of what those metrics are, because that's what we evaluate ourselves on after 3 months. And do we need to pivot? What's going right? What's going wrong? That's the big thing here. And I want to make one edit to the content or to the overall marketing calendar. It is a living document, but it's also an evolving document because things change, right? And if you're looking at data as often as you should, you could realize, okay, this is just not falling where we need it to fall. We need to pivot and do this instead.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Paul, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to measure and adapt. And I feel like so many companies are slow to do that. So I think it's a great point you made right there at the end. And Beth, to answer your question, we got answers all over the board, right? We've only got a very few 10s. We've got a bunch of 3s, 5s, 8s, and 9s. So what I take away from that is that people aren't necessarily using them. The best practice that I have found, and I came from a very corporate environment into sort of more of a startup environment, is use a live tool. So Microsoft Excel tries to be live, but it's very difficult sometimes to make live updates to it. The advantage of Google Sheets is that multiple people can be in the document at the same time, working with it. So you have people with their right brain, people with the left brain. You might even have content creators. You might even have approvers in a document multiple times a day or week. And if you're constantly emailing files back and forth, it becomes very difficult to keep it live. So, I've seen people that are talking about, does a weekly one count? A week or more often is absolutely a best practice, right? So many times we see people create one during an annual planning cycle, and literally that collects electronic dust. It does dust and doesn't get touched for 3 months, 6 months, or God forbid a year. So it should be a living document that you're constantly using. So I think that's a great point there as well.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
think about when you're planning content for the holidays, right? So if you're planning that in September, you roughly know, you can do some research on what people are going to be talking about during the holiday season, but you have to revisit it in real time because your tools are going to give you, if you're doing a holiday meal planning or this sale on this thing, you're not going to be able to see exactly how many people are looking for certain topics online until that time gets closer. So you have to be willing to pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as we wrap, the proof is really in the pudding here, right? So we have many examples. We do this for a lot of different clients, but I just wanted to pull 2 of them out. So one of them, and a common question we didn't get it in this webinar, is, does this apply to B2B and B2C? And the answer is absolutely yes. The process is the same, irrespective of if you're buying a $5 pound of cheese or some product in a consumer packaged goods environment, if it's e-commerce. if it's hardcore B2B, if it's a SaaS product, we have seen this proven over and over and over, the ability to get all these together. So just one example, again, a piece of cheese. And if you have a Costco membership, you've probably consumed this particular product. And we tripled their SEO traffic, more than double their conversions, and increase their email marketing conversions by doing these very processes in a very real way, by repositioning their brand, using the story brand framework, and doing a whole bunch of content marketing. So it absolutely works on the consumer side. And then we have a high value B2B software that we helped implement a new website, put in lead generation processes. They were running Google Ads. And so those conversion rates went up more than 5x with the same spend, more than tripled their leads, 3.5 times their leads, and then reduced their cost by conversion by 93% just by finding sources of waste, by looking at these enormously large data sets and finding the areas that are working and that aren't working. So it absolutely works. It works for all different kinds of businesses. I was holding one of the questions that came across about we have multiple companies, we have geographically restricted areas, and we have some that are nationwide. Does this still work small versus big? The answer is absolutely yes. It's being able to apply these processes in the right scale at the right time. Another project that we worked on, we specifically had a geographic dynamic in New York City, and we did a specific analysis in New York City to find what could be done on a very specific product line in that area, because this was a product that helps constrain space. And so the hypothesis was we should do a better job in New York because the living spaces are so much more constrained. So it absolutely works on a geographic basis. It works for national brands. It works for geographically individual ones. It works for niches and those things like that. I'll go back to one of the things Paul said earlier. It's really about defining the clear business problem or the business question on the front end that allows you to pull the right data, set it up the right way, then tell the right story, and pull all of that through. So it absolutely works on that basis. Okay, I'll give my own voice of breath and I'll open it up to any more questions. We've got a couple of additional questions coming in. As you're marking your last questions, here's what I'll say. Just a very big thank you to all of the people who took time out of their busy days to log in. We're happy to follow up to do an individual session. Please feel free to shoot me an email. It goes directly to me. I answer all my email. So ask me any questions that you want. We're happy to do what we'll call a 30 minutes, no strings attached strategy session around either growing your digital presence online or any other marketing strategy or digital marketing questions that you might have. Please put webinar follow-up in the subject, because I also get a lot of spam. So please don't add me to your spam lists. And then please don't forget to follow And Marketing on LinkedIn. And I'm going to pop that one in the chat so you guys can all give us a quick follow. I'm going to leave a couple minutes for questions here. So Paul, I'm going to go with, hold on. Paul, I'm going to go with you. Oh, Beth, I'm sorry. It goes back to the content calendar. So the question is, how often should you update your content calendar? How far in advance? We may have already answered that, but I want to make sure we got to that one.
Yeah, so our best practice with ourselves and all of our clients is minimum quarterly. So quarterly is how often Paul and I get together and frame out strategy based on all of the data he's pulling for us and based on how often things are changing. That being said, when you go to create content, if you're batch creating, go back to your data people and make sure nothing has changed since you pulled that information before. Like I said, holidays, seasonality, catastrophic world events, things like that can really adjust what people are searching for online. So it's kind of two-pronged. You want to do it far in advance, but you got to be willing to make last minute changes.
The one thing I'll add to that too is if you're utilizing BI tools, you can create APIs with your data that goes directly into your dashboards that will automatically refresh, or not automatically refresh. There's options to automatically or manually refresh them. So you can go into those dashboards at any time, refresh them, and see the latest up-to-date, latest and greatest.
Yeah, the analogy, Paul, that you've taught me is that it's like a water meter. So once you go into these tools and start aggregating data and you turn the water meter on, you can go in and get a reading whenever you want to. I think the bigger exercise is when you actually go do that. So that's really useful. And I've got one last question we'll try to get to here. And there are a couple of other ones we'll follow up offline. So Paul, this question might be for you. And it's, once you get data and insights, how do you communicate it to other departments outside of marketing in a way that is actionable? That's
a great question, and one that we argue about often here. Really, it's just making sure that so we'll give you an example. One of the things that we do is Dex and I, for my colleague Dex and I, for our big BI projects, we'll work with Beth. We'll give her all of the data. We'll say, this feels really big to us. But the problem is most data people will get marred down in the data and write heavy-handedly. So we utilize Beth and her team to help us kind of make the most important points stand out. So one of the things that we always do, we do monthly reporting for all of our clients. We send over the insights that my team and I will find, and we send those over to our entire team to review. And this is how we avoid our silos. Beth will ask us questions. Wait, why did this go up? Why did this go down? Our digital ads team will say, okay, this is good. We should optimize this. And really just making sure that we're calling out the most important things and not being buried within our own data. So again, it goes back to collaboration. We'll pull out our initial insights and then we collaborate and say, these things feel important to us. What do you guys think? And then we get their input. If there's something different, we go back and look in the data.
And with, I know there's been some chatter in the comments about sales, right? So when we're conversing with sales departments, it's the sales departments in-house for our clients. And so two of the things that we like to do often with sales departments is, number one, I know Paul's team's always checking to see if the leads that we're sending the sales department are good leads, right? Are the calls you getting good? Are the email follow-ups? Are the form fill-outs? Are these leads good leads? Are we attracting the right people with our efforts? And the other thing is, I love to hop on the phone when it comes to storytelling and talk to people in the sales departments and find out, when they get on the phone with people, what are the objections, and head those objections off within the story that we're telling in the content, so that their fears and the risks can be reassured before they even get to those sales calls.
That's great. That's great. Wonderful. We are at time. So we promised you 45 minutes. We went a little bit over. We apologize for that, but hopefully this was a really valuable time. So one last quick piece of feedback that I'll request in the chat is, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is immense value and 1 is, I thought it was really boring and I can't believe I actually logged in. I'd love a score of 1 to 10 on how we did in terms of providing value to you guys. That is our entire objective of doing these webinars, and we always want to make them better. So the last request I have is the one that's on the screen. Please provide feedback when the survey comes out. And thank you everybody so much for your time this afternoon. Have a great day, and we appreciate you very much.